The Nintendo Switch has been extremely popular lately, leaving nearly every retailer unable to keep up with the ever-increasing demand. In fact, it even surpassed the Wii U and 3DS in terms of sales within the past 4 months. However, is it a good console that truly lives up to the hype? The Nintendo Switch right out of the box comes with the console itself, 2 Joy-Cons, 2 Joy-Con wristbands, the Joy-Con grip, the dock, an HDMI cable, and an AC adapter. The console has a USB-C port on the back, a headphone jack on the top, a game card slot, a kickstand, and a micro SD card, which is hidden in the kickstand when you lift it up. The console itself is surprisingly lightweight. The Joy-Cons are also fairly light as well, but they are pretty small. The wristbands pretty much turn the Joy-Cons into smaller Wii remotes, and the Joy-Con grip turns the 2 Joy-Cons into a square-shaped Xbox controller. The included dock is a pretty cool concept, but probably the worst design accessory. It doesn't have anything to do with the port placement on the back or anything like that. It's just the fact that because it's entirely made of plastic and the Switch's screen is made of glass, the dock will pretty much guarantee that your Switch will get scratches, because when you slide the Switch in and out of the dock to charge it or turn it into TV mode, you're rubbing the screen against the plastic. When you buy a Switch, you pretty much have to get a screen protector if you don't want your screen to be scratched. Overall, the included accessories are plentiful, letting you use the Joy-Cons in around 4 different ways. However, it would have been nice if Nintendo included the 1-2-Switch game with the console, as that game is more of a glorified tech demo than a full-price AAA game. The Nintendo Switch is, quite obviously, not as powerful as the Xbox One or PS4, but that's not the reason why you'll buy a Nintendo Switch. You'll buy a Nintendo Switch because of the games, and for the fact that it is the most powerful portable console out there right now. The Switch can't run games at a 4K resolution like consoles and PCs nowadays do, but almost all the games on the Nintendo Switch, when docked, run at a smooth 1080p 60 frames per second, which to me at least is good enough. When undocked, it will run games at a lower 720p resolution, but the frame rate still stays at 60 frames per second. However, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is different. It is an open world game, so it does have to load a lot more items than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe does. But to try and keep Zelda running at a consistent frame rate, Nintendo made it so that the game, in dock mode, runs at 900p 30 frames per second. Playing Breath of the Wild undocked will still net you that 720p resolution and will remain locked at 30 frames per second. Breath of the Wild is also available on the Wii U, but that game only runs at 720p at 30 frames per second, so it's a pretty significant downgrade. So I would definitely recommend picking up Breath of the Wild on the Switch and not the Wii U. The game is still prone to frame rate drops, but they only happen when you're loading a lot of things going on at once. Regardless of all these problems, Breath of the Wild is still an amazing game. Most open world games normally run at 30 frames per second anyway, so it's pretty impressive how Nintendo managed to pull this off. If you really want to see what the Switch is capable of, you should definitely play games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or Splatoon 2, as those games both stay at a solid 60 frames per second. Eventually, the Nintendo Switch will receive titles like Rocket League or Skyrim. Rocket League has been confirmed to run at 720p 60 frames per second in both docked and undocked mode. However, it has not been released yet, so I cannot 100% confirm this, but Psyonix themselves said that they were aiming to make it that. Even on the Xbox One and PS4, Rocket League still runs at 1080p 60 frames per second. I know the higher resolution on those consoles seems more appealing, however, this Rocket League you can take anywhere, and it'll still run at 720p 60 frames per second, which is still very impressive for a portable console. However, with such great performance comes a great price: battery life. The battery life on the Switch is mediocre, as it only lasts around 3 hours when playing any AAA game, and that's on around 40% brightness. The battery life isn't very important when you're just playing the Switch at home, because you're really just going to use TV mode most of the time anyways, not really handheld mode. But when you're taking the Switch on the go, like on a long flight or a long drive for example, you're going to be pretty disappointed. Overall, the Nintendo Switch performance-wise isn't too much different than the Wii U. Sure, it runs Breath of the Wild at a better resolution, and it actually has better sound effects on the Nintendo Switch version than it does the Wii U version, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Mario Kart 8 both stay the same pretty much. They do have added motion blur in the Nintendo Switch version though, but that's only a minor upgrade. Right now, the latest update you can get for your Nintendo Switch is version 3.0.1. The user interface is fairly simple and it's really smooth as well. You can even choose between 2 themes in the settings, although I do prefer the darker theme. If you want to access quick settings anytime, all you have to do is hold down the home button on the right Joy-Con. You can view the battery life on the console, adjust the brightness, turn on airplane mode, etc., which is really handy when you're playing a game. However, you can really only do like 5 things with the Switch right now though, besides play games. You can check out the latest news and trailers on Switch games on the News app, and follow different news channels about a certain game. A cool new thing you can also do in the News app is, by just reading a Breath of the Wild article, you can obtain free items. Those items may not be hard to find in the game, but it's still a really cool concept, and I hope Nintendo does something similar with other games to keep users engaged with this app. In the Nintendo eShop, you can buy any sort of game you want. So you can buy those AAA Nintendo titles like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Breath of the Wild, and Splatoon 2, or you can buy one of those games that take up less storage, like Snipperclips, Sonic Mania, and even Minecraft. A micro SD card is completely necessary if you plan on purchasing those bigger games for the Switch, as the Switch only comes with around 26 gigabytes of storage, as the other 6 gigabytes are from software updates and pre-installed items. It's a big letdown that a game console comes with such little storage, especially because games nowadays require a lot more space. Breath of the Wild, for example, takes up around 14 gigabytes, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe takes up around 7 gigabytes, and Splatoon 2 takes up around 3 gigabytes. For those bigger kinds of games, you should definitely buy their physical copies. They're actually smaller than a DS cartridge, which is really amazing. But the thing is, like, you could easily lose them, so I would definitely recommend buying a case for them if you plan on taking them with you. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but now let's talk about the third thing which you can do on your Switch. Post and view screenshots. You can view and post screenshots in the album. You take a screenshot by pressing the square button on the left Joy-Con. Just be careful who you lend the left Joy-Con to, as just anybody can just randomly press that left button over and over again, and you're going to have to delete all those 50 screenshots that they took. What you can actually do with screenshots is pretty basic. You can add text to them, or you can post them to your Twitter or Facebook page. The thing is, you can't actually go onto your Twitter or Facebook page from the Switch, and it's very disappointing that this is not available, as the Switch is still a portable device. The fourth thing which you can do on your Switch is go onto your page. In your page, you can invite and add friends from your Wii U, Nintendo 3DS, even your phone. Also, on your page, you can also view the hours you played on each game. However, you have to own the game for approximately 10 days in order to view how long you played in that game, which does kind of suck as you can't keep track of how many hours you played each day during that 10-day period. The last thing you can do on your Nintendo Switch is create Miis, but it's hidden under the system settings. It's very odd for why Nintendo decided to hide Mii creation under system settings, but at least it didn't remove the ability to create them. Besides all of that, that's pretty much it for what the Switch has to offer in terms of software right now, which you can tell is pretty lacking for a console. Even the 3DS and the Wii, when they were both first released, had more to offer in software than the Switch does right now. According to Nintendo, video streaming services like Netflix, Hulu+, YouTube, etc. will eventually, quote-unquote, come in time. However, it's been 5 months since I've said this, and we have seen no sign of these services being released in North America. There is one available in Japan, but like I said, it's been 5 months and we haven't gotten them yet. There is actually one more thing that you can do involving the Switch. However, you have to own the online app and you have to own a copy of Splatoon 2. So if you do not own Splatoon 2, then you can't really use the app. Now, I may not own a copy of Splatoon 2, however, my friend does, and he has described to me what you can actually do on the app and what's good about it and what's bad about it. So the good about the app is that you can actually order gear from Splatnet, you can share battles with your friends, and you can check out battle stages, and quite a bit more. However, there is one feature that he finds extremely infuriating that a lot of people actually find pretty disappointing as well, and it's the voice chat. You have to use your phone to be able to call people in Splatoon 2, and you can't even use the Switch to do that. Even worse is the fact that you have to leave the app open in order to use it, as the chat will run in the background. So you can't turn off your phone and use the app at the same time. And what makes this even worse is that the app actually consumes a lot of battery. So I would highly recommend not using this voice chat. I would use like Skype or Discord or something. But the whole concept of this is absolutely terrible. Like, it's kind of like using your phone for Skype, like a worse version of Skype, and using your computer to play something like CSGO. It doesn't make any sense. Why not just run both Skype and CSGO on your computer and not have to run them both separately on different devices? It just doesn't make any sense, and I'm not sure why Nintendo decided to do this. Overall, the app is pretty decent. Obviously, voice chat is a huge problem right now. If you take a look at the App Store, you'll see the ratings are really, really low. So, but don't let this intimidate you. Like the other features, they're still like decent. Like, well, at least according to my friend, like they're still very useful. Like viewing your stats and ordering gear from Splatnet, it's fairly useful. Just don't use the voice chat. It's not a good idea at all. It's gonna drain your battery life. It's terrible. But I really hope that Nintendo adds some more games for the Switch Online app. It would be kind of cool if they did something with Mario Kart 8 or Breath of the Wild, or maybe even ARMS. That would be really cool. So overall, the app is decent. Just don't get it if you don't own Splatoon 2. Okay, so it might be kind of weird how I'm having a controllers category, but I figured that the Joy-Cons are so unique that I needed to talk more about them, so I decided to make a controllers category. So anyways, the Joy-Cons included with the Switch are an amazing innovation and a huge improvement over the Wii remotes. The fact that they can function as either one or two controllers was an amazing idea by Nintendo. So technically, the Switch actually does come with two controllers. The cool thing is, each one has a built-in gyroscope sensor, and it is extremely responsive over the Wii remote. This is especially noticeable when comparing the tilt controls on Mario Kart Wii to the tilt controls on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Also, each Joy-Con and the Pro Controller has a feature known as HD Rumble, which is pretty much an advanced form of haptic feedback. HD Rumble is probably the best form of haptic feedback you'll ever get in a controller, because everything from collecting coins in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to going in that insane flurry rush in Breath of the Wild felt extremely realistic. You'll get more haptic feedback for games like 1-2-Switch, if you're willing to pay nearly full price for that game. The buttons on the Joy-Cons are around the size of the buttons on a DS, and yet they aren't as bad as I thought they'd be, with one exception which I will get into. You can use the Joy-Cons in around 4 different ways, by either 1. Leaving the Joy-Cons attached to the Switch for handheld mode, 2. Detaching them and using them like a Wii Remote and Nunchuck, 3. Using the Joy-Con grip, or 4. Holding them sideways and using them in games like Rayman Legends or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This Nintendo Switch setup is actually the same as the Wii U gamepad, with the differences being that it's much thinner, the joysticks are positioned differently, the plastic has a more premium feel to it, and some buttons have been relocated. Overall, in my opinion, I preferred this mode over the Wii U gamepad because the Wii U gamepad just felt clunky, it felt cheap. I didn't really like it that much. But if you do own a Wii U gamepad, it might take some time to get used to if you played on your Wii U a lot. But I mean, once you get used to it, it's going to feel super comfortable and you're definitely going to notice how lighter it is. I actually really like the second setup for the Nintendo Switch using the Joy-Cons. It's kind of like using a Wii Remote and Nunchuck like I mentioned before, except the Joy-Cons are smaller, there's 2 joysticks instead of the D-pad on the Wii Remote and the joystick on the Nunchuck. In my opinion, I prefer the Joy-Cons over the Wii Remote and Nunchuck setup because I absolutely hate using wires. I'm just glad these are wireless. You can move them as far apart as you want to and there's no connection disruption or anything like that. So yeah, I really like this setup and it's definitely one of my favorites. So the third way you can use your Joy-Cons is by plugging them into the Joy-Con grip. I personally do not like the Joy-Con grip all that much because it's supposed to be like a normal controller, yet it doesn't feel like it. It's just because of the fact that when you move your thumb to hit the joysticks and the buttons, you're moving it directly up and down. On the Xbox One controller, PS4 controller, like pretty much every controller out there, you move your thumbs diagonally and it felt like perfectly fine, but it doesn't feel natural to me. I never really got used to it, so I would not recommend using the grip unless you think you can get used to it. But other than that, if you just want to use your Switch as a home console, I would recommend getting the Pro Controller. The Pro Controller is more expensive than relative controllers, so you should really only pick it up if you have the money for it. I personally do not have it. I've tried it out though. It's actually pretty comfortable. The buttons are much bigger, there's a gyroscope, and there's even HD Rumble on it, which is amazing. But I mean, personally, I would wait for a sale for the Pro Controller because that money's better off being spent on the upcoming Mario Odyssey or Sonic Forces or a new game that's coming out. So yeah, I would kind of recommend the Pro Controller, but like I said, just wait for a sale because it's really expensive right now. Alright, so enough about the Pro Controller. Now let's talk about the Joy-Cons again. So the final way you can use your Joy-Cons are only for multiplayer games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Rayman Legends. So what you do is take one Joy-Con and turn it sideways. There is a left trigger and right trigger on the top of each Joy-Con, which you can make bigger by attaching a wristband, which I highly recommend because the triggers do cramp up your fingers quite a lot if you're using it without the wristband. The wristbands do help quite a bit, but I mean, they still cramp up your fingers. But once you get used to it, you have almost no issue with it. The buttons are pretty small in this mode, but just like the triggers, you're gonna get used to them eventually. Like, this is perfectly fine for multiplayer, however, I would not recommend using this for the single player modes in these multiplayer games. Overall, I believe that the Joy-Cons are amazing, innovative controllers for the console, and I consider them to be a pretty good successor to the Wii Remote. Some ways to use the Joy-Cons are worse than others, but that's just in my opinion. Alright, so there's going to be two versions of multiplayer that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to be talking about local multiplayer and online multiplayer. So let's cover local multiplayer first. Local multiplayer on the Switch is absolutely amazing. The fact that you can play with 2 players in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with no frame rate drops at 60 frames per second is something that will always impress me. And better yet, the fact that you can take it anywhere makes it even more impressive. Even when you're playing with 3 or 4 players in both docked and undocked mode, the frame rate does not drop at all. It does go down to 30 frames per second, like it's locked at 30 frames per second, but there are absolutely no frame rate drops in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I believe that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best game to experience local multiplayer on right now. There might be some games out within a few months from now that will have really good local multiplayer, but right now Mario Kart 8 is the ultimate package. Alright, so now let's move on to talking about the online multiplayer. So the online multiplayer is extremely smooth on the Nintendo Switch, and it loads really fast. I had absolutely no lag when playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe versus Races in almost all the battle modes. But there are 2 game modes in particular, Renegade Roundup and Shine Thief, which were kind of weird for me online. So in Renegade Roundup, when I was on the cop side trying to catch a Renegade, I almost always never caught them. Even though I was literally right behind them, it would almost always not work. Well, I mean, sometimes I actually do catch them, but then it lags for like a few seconds and then it registers that I caught them. This can get pretty confusing as sometimes you're just chasing a person you've already caught, yet there's so many people in multiplayer mode, so you can't exactly keep track of who you've caught and who you have to chase next in that game mode, which is why I don't really like playing this game mode online, but in single player it's perfectly fine. Shine Thief is another one of those game modes that does have some pretty frustrating lag issues. So you know how when you drive right beside the shine or right into it, it flies up into the air and it says that you got the shine, right? So one time I was actually driving beside the shine, so I didn't drive into it, but I drove beside it. It flew up into the air, and that's it. It just flew up into the air. It didn't show my name or anything. It didn't show that I had it. And I even looked at this frame by frame. Nobody was near the shine at the time. Maybe somebody could have lagged by that time, but then again, the shine wasn't caught until a few seconds later, so it doesn't make any sense for why this happened. Luckily, it's really only these 2 battle modes that have the issue, and everything else runs perfectly fine without any lag. The best part of the whole online multiplayer experience is that it's free right now. The worst part is that you'll have to start paying for it sometime in 2018. One of my favorite things about the Wii was the fact that online multiplayer was absolutely free. Even on the Wii U, it was free. But Nintendo putting a price on a service is very disappointing. Luckily, it is still much cheaper than the other online services, costing around $20 American for 1 year, compared to the $60 American Microsoft and Sony are charging for their online services. Nintendo's online service is supposed to come with a free retro game every month, like Super Mario Bros. Or Dr. Mario, which might be the reason why it's cheaper, as they aren't worth a lot of value compared to most of the games Sony and Microsoft offer for their services, but they're still really good games. I am kind of disappointed with Nintendo's decision to force players to pay for the online services, but since it's supposed to be much cheaper, I most likely will get it anyways. The Nintendo Switch is almost everything you'd expect from a portable console. The Joy-Cons are innovative, the performance is amazing for a portable device, and the games will provide you with a lot of enjoyment. It truly is a huge step forward from the Wii U, and although I may have some issues currently, it's still an amazing console that shows exactly what Nintendo can be capable of. I'm giving the Switch an 8 out of 10. Just a quick news update on the Switch, there are going to be bundles that are eventually going to come out, so before you buy a Switch, you might want to consider buying a bundle. You do save quite a bit of money, you do get a carrying case, and it costs around $380 American, so you do save quite a bit of money. They have not been released yet in Canada, so if I were you, I would just wait until a bundle. It seems like a really good deal, and I kind of regret not waiting to buy a bundle either. This Splatoon 2 bundle will be available first at Walmart in America, so if you're interested in picking that up, you should definitely pick it up right away if you really want to get the Switch. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of the video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.